हरि ओम। ओम सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। समस्त जन कल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं एवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्म विद्मरम्। ओम श्री चिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः। योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पातञ्जलि प्राञ्जलिना नतोऽस्मि। हरि ओम। In about 50 or 60 odd hours, we have tried to grapple with the subject of Samadhi Pada, the first of the 4 sections of Patanjali Yoga Sutra. We are almost reaching the concluding part of Samadhi Pada. And as we're reaching to the end, certain things are hopefully and should be, or rather ought to be, clear to us about the sadhana of yogi. The concepts of the first section of Patanjali Yoga Sutra are about elaboration of what the samadhi is. That is the reason why the name is Samadhi Pada. We have seen that we generally transact in the world presuming that we know everything. The fact is that we know nothing. And the contradiction is because every object that we see, we only barely touch the surface of the object. It is called Anshika Tadarupata. In our regular vyavhar, we do say that I know the person and I am acquainted with the person. In other words, we say, मैं उसको अच्छी तरह से नहीं जानता हूँ. What we are trying to say is, I am aware of his whereabouts, surname, where he works, etc. But how the person is, I am not aware. Similarly, every object that we see in this world, may it be a television, may it be a stone, may it be a car, may it be a person, may it be a tree, may it be a water, a flowing river, a mountain, we see the object, but we do not know the object. The reason we do not know the object is the same faculty of perception called antakarana or buddhi, which uses the indriyas to see the object, touches the superficial surface of the object, and that is enough for us to transact in this world. We do not bother, nor it is required for us to penetrate in the object. One, it is not required because everybody is happy with looking at the car. It is moving from one place to other place. It has a particular name and he says it is an expensive car and I'm very happy I'm owning an expensive car. It is a transactory world. Nobody tries to see what is precisely in the car. So the true swarupa, the true nature of the object is always, always unknown to us. That is why our seeing is called non-seeing by many saints. They say people are blind. A yogi thinks of seeing the things or the objects in the depth. And the reason why he thinks so and why the ordinary people do not think so is because to think in this manner, you require sattva guna. Why is it that only few people in the early morning are bothered to get up and listen to Patanjali Yoga Sutra while others are snoring in their beds? Is because the rajas and tamas in them is predominant. We have somehow collected our sattva guna to see that I want to penetrate into this subject called Patanjali Yoga Sutra to understand what it is. The difference only is, sir, the application of the sattva guna and the depth of application. So it goes without saying that the one who has a less and less raja and tamaguna is the only one who can attempt to see into the depths of an object very clear. So looking into the depth of any object is called dhyanam. When you want to look into the depth of any object, it's like you want to see in the darkness because you don't know the depth of the object. But if you want to see in the darkness, you must have a powerful torch. How much darkness, how much you can penetrate the darkness depends upon the power of the torch or the light. Similarly, in order to penetrate the object, you require enormously powerful potential brain or antakarana buddhi. So that means you have to constantly increase the penetrating power of the buddhi, increase its width of the light that it can give, so that more and more things are brought to the light. Bringing things to the light is enlightenment. So enlightenment is what you do when you penetrate your concentration into an object to see the true nature of the object. So far, whatever we have discussed, we are very clear in simple words that what I see as a normal person with open eyes is an object. Once I see an object, but now I want to see the object in true nature, that means I want to discard the superior or the superficial aspect of the object, then I focus on the object, and first thing that is revealed to me is that sthula object, the sthula murti, the sthula ishta devata, the sthula object taken in front of my concentration, it bears open something more than what a normal person sees. That means now the penetrating level has crossed one stage beyond. And what do I come to know at the first stage? At the first stage, I come to know that the name that I gave to that particular object is a separate thing. The knowledge so far I had about that object is a separate thing. And the true meaning of that object is a separate thing. This is the first revelation in concentration exercise. What is the first revelation? That which I was calling so far a murti of Rama, now I come to know that Ram is just a designation, Sanketa, it's a word. So word is separate. I also come to know that, it is a murti which is about hardly about a feet in length, and we always worship in the morning, and he's a very beneficent God. That jnanam is also a separate thing. Then what remains? There is something more than this in this object, which is the earth or the meaning, real meaning of that object. First time I realize it. So my first realization in the attempt of concentration or dhanam on any object is transcending the first step, entering into the next step, which is in the interior of an object, to know Shabda, Jnana, Artha as separate thing. This is the first step of concentration. Because the buddhi used for this isolation of three things while concentrating is not an ordinary buddhi. Had it been an ordinary buddhi, I would have realized this as a murti and I'm happy with that. But now I have gone beyond that. Suddenly that buddhi has realized some power in it. So I'm using the extraordinary power of the buddhi. So such a buddhi is called vikasita buddhi, a developed intellect, and that is why it is called prajna. That means when dhyanam or concentration is attempted by antahkarana or buddhi, then it changes its potentiality, penetrating power, and its light becomes more wider, and it gets transformed from buddhi into prajna. That prajna, like in a darkness, when we put the torch of the light, first you come to know are the major big things in the darkness. Oh, there is a cupboard there, there is a wall there, there is a door there. These are big things. So this is like seeing the big things as a separate door, cupboard, wall. Similarly here, we come to know Shabda, Jnana, Artha as separate. And it is the first revealing thing, shocking thing to a yogi. Oh, so far what I was saying was an intermix of all these three things. I could not separate them. Now I am able to separate them. Mind well, my mind is still on the sthula vishaya. Whenever such three different constituents are perceived by the buddhi, it is called vitarka. Now, when I am concentrating on these three, I have one element present in me. And what is that element? I am completely aware that I'm sitting in dhyanam and I'm trying to see an object with the concentration. So I'm simultaneously, I'm aware that I'm sitting in this hall early in the morning, and I am trying to concentrate in which I am able to see the three constituents of an object. Shabda, Jnana, Artha. That means I am aware of myself. What is awareness of myself? To be aware of time and space is my awareness. Mind well, true awareness is a different thing. Presently, or all of us, we say, I am aware. What are you aware of? You are aware of where you are and what time is it. Other than this, is there any other thing, other awareness we have? Nothing. I am aware of my surroundings, that this thing is there, that thing is there. This is a sofa. I am sitting on the sofa. That means I have a spatial orientation. And also I know it is not a midnight or it is not a midday. It is early morning. I am aware of the time. So to be aware of time and space is our awareness. The same awareness is there when I'm trying to concentrate in the beginning, when I see the object as three different constituents, Shabda, Jnana, Artha. That means the object has opened up its first layer. I'm able to see it in three different parts or constituents, and simultaneously I'm aware that I am sitting here and I'm watching it. So when I am having knowledge of these three different parts with simultaneous awareness of me in time and space, it is called savitarkata. And then longer name for that is savitarka samprajnat samadhi. As I keep on concentrating, the three constituents I'm still able to see, but slowly it happens that I start forgetting my awareness. That means my knowledge about time and space, my relevance to time and space slowly starts diminishing. When this relevance to space and time is diminished to the full, and yet I am able to see the object in three different constituents, the Shabda, the Jnana, and the Artha. This is called Nirvitarka Samprajnat Samadhi. Mind well, Even now, my concentration is on a gross object. As Lord's design is, the one who has reached this second stage from Savitarka Sampradnat to Nirvitarka Sampradnat, from the identification of object into three different constituents of Shabda Jnana Artha, along with his own awareness, to identification as Shabda Jnana Artha without awareness of time and space, automatically the second door opens, the second layer of the object opens. Now from Sthula, he will enter into Sukshma. What is there inside an object now? Inside the object now is not Shabda Jnana Artha. Inside the object now is the micro aspect or the Sukshma aspect of an object. We can only imagine it because we have never seen it. The yogi now, because of power of concentration of that prajna, is able to see the object in sukshma form. That sukshma form is called tanmatra form. And the tanmatra form, they do not have shabda jnana artha, that is already transcended. Now what we have is desha kala sthiti of that particular tanmatra. What is that tanmatra? It is the essence of an object. See, we are trying to use different words. Why? Because we have not experienced it. Those who have experienced are trying to tell us out of their experience when they have come back to our level. This coming back to our level of consciousness is called vyuthana, reverting back. So those who reached, experienced, and came back are describing this. So from that description, every object has a microscopic or a sukshma aspect which is seen. Seen by whom? Not by eyes. Seen by buddhi itself. Because when you're interacting with indriyas outside, 5 indriyas are working. Our only indriya when you concentrate is your buddhi. So this buddhi, when it appears to be the indriya, it is called pratibha. So this prajna, with its creative aspect called pratibha, penetrates into the second level where you see the tanmatras, and these tanmatras are the sukshma aspect of any object, and they are same for all objects. That is why it doesn't matter which object is in front of you for concentration. Some of the higher yogis, they do not even take any object or a murti in front of them for concentration. Tapovan Maharaj took himself as an object. Imagine you are focusing on yourself. That is called aham graha upasana. Aham graha. I am the object. That is also possible. But commonly, easier is to first have a murti in front of you and focus on that. Then through that murti, you enter into the interior of the object, the second layer where you see the sukshma bhutas or the tanmatras, and you focus on that. When you do, there also you are again aware of the time and the space. You are aware that you are focusing, and you are aware that what you are seeing, both you are aware. The microscopic or the sukshma bhuta is also perceived, and you're also perceiving that I am observing it, because you are aware of the time and space. When you are aware, it is called savichar. And then when the space and time boundary is gone, you get absorbed so much into the sukshma bhutas that there is no relevance left for time and space. The yogi is not aware when did he start, where is he sitting. He is now only aware of the sukshma bhuta. It is called nirvichara sampradnyat samadhi. Up to this point, the yogi's mind is concentrating on the object. Initially the stool or the gross part of the object, then the sukshma part of the microscopic micro part of the object. Now the yogi has finished his game with the object. Now he doesn't require any more object. What is the next target of concentration? The indriyas itself. For example, indriyas doesn't mean you concentrate on eye or the skin. Those are the peripheral aspects of indriyas. Indriyas means ability of the eye, the power of the eye. A question may arise in the mind. I can understand an object of concentration, which is like there's a Ramamurti or whatever. Maybe I can understand the microscopic or the Sukshma Bhuta part. But to focus on the Indriyas itself, it sounds very, very strange. But one who has reached up to the second door, the third door automatically opens. Again, yogi girdles up the lion and tries to focus on further, and the next object of focus is Indriya itself. And mind well, Indriyas in their pure form is pure Sattva Guna. So now my Sattva Guna, which is my Buddhi, because now it is in the penetrating form, which itself means it is pure Sattvika Buddhi with very little Rajantama into it. That is focusing on Sattva Guna of the Indriya. So Sattva is concentrating on Sattva, and pure Sattva is Ananda. Pure Sattva is Ananda. So this Samadhi gives yogi enormous amount of happiness. He is happy. That is why he is again and again trying to go in the Samadhi. Now he is not bothered about the world, nothing. He says, why, what is this enjoyment you're talking in the world? It is absolutely fickle. Fee upon that particular happiness which you derive from the world. Look at my happiness. I derive my happiness from the Indriyas and focus on the Indriyas. This particular, again, Samadhi, because it focuses on Indriya, which itself results into only Anandam, is called Sampradnyat Ananda Samadhi. Again, in this Samadhi, if you are focusing or if you are concentrating, doing dhanam on the Indriyas, if you are aware of time and space, it is called Sananda Samadhi, Savichara Sananda Samadhi. If you are not aware, it is Nirvichar. Now comes the last and the most important bastion or the most inner door of any object. And that object is, the object has already been concentrated upon. The mean or the medium of concentration, Indriya, that also has been concentrated upon. Now the concentration is on the concentrator. Very difficult to perceive, even to understand intellectually is difficult. Imagine how difficult the task must be. You are concentrating on yourself. A question comes to the mind, how can you concentrate on yourself? But it is possible. When that is done, the buddhi concentrates on yourself, means the ahankara or asmita, it is called. So focusing on yourself is called asmita or asmita anugata sampradnyat samadhi. So through these 4 stages, which we have seen in detail with each sutras in the preceding sessions, yogi attempts to do his concentration exercise first on the grahya, that is object, then grahana, indriya, and grahita or grahitru, that is himself, self, which is asmita, anugata, sampradnyat, samadhi. Once these three things are clear to us, then it is easier to understand the next sutra. The sutra says, as long as we are having a samadhi which is trying to hold on to something, it is called as a sabija samadhi. Sabija samadhi means you are concentrating on something. That means there is a chitta or antakarna, there is something to be concentrated upon, and there is a link between the two. This is called alambana, so it is called a sabija samadhi. But what happens beyond this? Beyond this, yogi has nothing left to concentrate. He enters into a phase of concentrated person. So the yogi is basking only in dhyanam. Of what? Nothing of. Only in dhyanam. So far, dhyanam could not be done without an object. Now it is only dhanam. When there is no dependent object taken by this yogi for concentration, it is called nirbija samadhi. Now comes the question, what is the state of yogi in that samadhi? The first thing that undergoes transformation is, so far the buddhi, which was very refined and penetrating intellect, was used for concentrating first on the sthula, then on the sukshma, then on the grahana, that is indriya, then on the asmita. Now it has gone beyond that. So the prajna now becomes a new buddhi called rutambhara. This rutambhara buddhi is the highest form of buddhi that yogi gets. There are so many beauties about this buddhi. What happens with this buddhi? This buddhi is, first of all, in this buddhi, there are no vichar, no vritti, no vichar. So it is a nirvichar. So what happens in that buddhi, in nirvichara buddhi? Nirvichar vaisharadye adhyatma prasadaha. That is the 47th sutra. What it means is, when you are into that Rutambara Buddhi, in Nirvichara stage, you get purified. Vaisharadya means purification. The word for clinical expert is called Visharada, Shalya Vidya Visharada. This is how we say. Visharada means one who purifies, or one with purified intellect. So, Nirvicharata of Nirbija Samadhi purifies the intellect, and such purified intellect gets Adhyatma Prasad. What is Adhyatmika Prasad? Adhyatmik Prasad is Shoka Rahita Avastha. This is the point. From now on, yogi is completely freed from the sorrow. We always say that Gurudeva always had a smile on his face. He was never sad or depressed. It was not an attempted thing. He had reached a stage of this particular nirvichara vaisharadya sthiti. He was constantly basking in adhyatma prasad. Your own soul, Atman, gives you a prasad or the grace, and that grace is a shoka rahitata. What happens in this man's condition? Such a person, yogi, is pure sattvic. There is no much of tamoguna left at all, and only required rajoguna is there. That is why the malam is not there. And this malam, is removed by the yogi at this stage. And then in this particular samadhi, what happens when he gets this buddhi called Rutambara buddhi? This buddhi has two important things which the yogi automatically gets. We are always surprised with the intellect of people like Gurudeva or Vivekananda. We all know that Vivekananda used to read paragraph by paragraph, pages by pages. He had knowledge of so many aspects that he even learned Latin. He learned little bit of, he could write and read French in no time. He could read and write, he could write and speak Tamil to a certain extent. And all this was because at the Rutambara Buddhi level, one is all Bhutartha Vishaya. That means everything that is there in this world, they get the real precise meaning of that particular thing. That is why when they look at money or car or any wealth or anything, they have the real meaning of that particular thing. So they are not tempted. If somebody would have attempted to give tons of money to Gurudeva, it doesn't tempt them. He sat in a private aircraft also. It didn't tempt him. He never felt that, oh, if this remains every day, I'll be so happy. That thought doesn't come. Because at Rutambara level, they are able to see the real meaning about everything. When there was dearth of money with Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, one Marwadi wanted to give 10,000 rupees in those days, 1885, 10,000 rupees. And moment he gave, he even asked, Ki Maharaj, I want to give you Swamiji 10,000 rupees. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa started crying. He complained to Kali Mata saying that, why Mata you want to do this to me? It pains me. Because he did not see 10,000 rupees as a transactory chalan in the world of Vyavahara. He is at Rutambara Buddhi level where they knew the real meaning. And what is the real meaning that he saw? This is something which is going to keep me away from God. So this is called Rutambara, Yatartha or Bhutartha Vishaya. Yatartha Vishaya. There is no Kalpita Vishaya. We are in Kalpita Vishaya. And this happens Yugapat. This word is important called Yugapat. Yugapat means when we want to take knowledge, let us say right now we are studying Yoga Shastra. How are we studying it? Somebody is telling, somebody is reading books, then you think, then you one by one you try to understand, and then you understand. There is a process involved in understanding anything. In case of a yogi, there is no process involved. Instant realization, instant knowledge. So if a yogi is asked, I'll give you an example, Chandrasekhar Saraswati, the famous Shankaracharya. Once one couple came to meet him, and the parents, the old people, were very, very good devotees of Acharya. I'm talking of Mahaperiyava. His son was that time studying in 1960s. He was studying he was working in America, and he had done his PhD in quantum physics. And he was working somewhere in senior position. He did not touch the feet of Mahaperiyava. His parents were displeased. They did not say anything. Mahaperiyava noted it. But with very kind heart, he asked this young gentleman, may I know your name, please? He was shocked to know that, Mahaperiyava could speak English. And then he said, yes, my name is so-and-so. What are you doing? I'm doing this. Then he said, what is your PhD? In which subject? The young man said that how this Swami will know about quantum physics and all. So he tried to say, I am in quantum physics. Mahaperiyava immediately asked, are you talking of negative quantum physics or into positive energy quantum physics? Now the gentleman was utterly shocked. After that, Mahaperiyava not only told him about those days in 60s, the upcoming subjects of quantum physics, which was basically talking about the entropy. And he said, the best concept of entropy is discussed in Nasadiya Sukta, please study it. Now the question is, how did Mahaperiyava came to know about this? Or we all know that a temperature is measured by degree kelvins, the energy. So that Kelvin is a person called Lord Kelvin. He was existing when Vivekananda went to America. He was called by 3 scientists. One of them was Lord Kelvin in America for food. And for the dinner, in the honor of Swami Vivekananda, the food was kept vegetarian. And these 3 stalwarts of that time of the world in the field of electricity, one of which was Lord Kelvin, they were discussing electricity with Swami Vivekananda for 2 hours before the dinner, and they all were impressed by his knowledge of electricity. The question is, where did Swami Vivekananda study electricity? Sir, there is no requirement of study. Why? Yugapat. So this is kramanu ananurodhi. It is not sequential knowledge. I go to the school, study the books, teacher teaches me, then my buddhi tries to think about it, then 10% I get inside me. This is a kramanu anurodhi, na anurodhi, the one which doesn't go sequentially. Yugapat sarvartha grahi. That is because now the buddhi is Rutambara. Rutambara buddhi has sarvartha prakash. So 2 aspects are there in Rutambara buddhi. One, shoka kul rahit avastha. No shok. Nothing in the world can make them unhappy. Our own Jairamji was once telling that Swamiji was delivering a lecture. During the lecture, a nail was biting in his thigh and it was bleeding. He continued the lecture, got up from the place, and then told somebody that, there is because somebody saw the blood. He didn't say a word about it. And then everybody said, oh my God, look at Swamiji. How much tolerant he is. Sir, he is not tolerant. The pain is happening to the body, but he is not in the body. Understand? He is a shoka rahita. Tapovan Maharaj left his mortal body. Swamiji did not cry. They say that one drop of tear was in the eye, etc., whatever. Why? The shock is not there. The concept of sorrow doesn't exist. Ever cheerful. Tukaram Maharaj has written an abhanga that I am basking in happiness. And this abhanga was composed when there was no food left to eat for the entire family. Doesn't it appear a contradictory thing? It is not contradictory. He was in that Anandamaya state. That is why 2 aspects of this state, which is Nirvichara and Rutambara, that is why yogi is called Tarati Shokatmavid. And this particular Rutambara Buddhi gives that. Now comes the question, how do we get the knowledge? We get the knowledge of anything with the help of pramana. That is why there is a philosophy is divided into 2 parts. Vastu Mimamsa, Pramana Mimamsa. Vastu Mimamsa, nature of an object. Pramana Mimamsa, how and what method is used to know the object. So Pramana Mimamsa, which is called epistemology. This Pramana Mimamsa is the means of validation. For example, I'm able to see the mobile in front of me, so I have a knowledge that mobile exists because I see pratyaksha. I have not seen the ruler of this place, but I have heard from somebody and this place is being regulated by him, so I make an anuman that he must be existing. I have not pratyaksha seen him. This is called anuman. Yatra dhumaha, tatra agnihi. There is a smoke, so there must be fire. Fire is not seen. There must be anuman. Then we have Shabda Praman. Right now we are studying Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Neither you nor me, both of us have not really experienced Samadhi, yet we are studying Samadhi, believing in what is written by Patanjali must be true. So this faith or Shraddha in that his words is called Shabda Pramana, 3rd Pramana. Then there is something called Upamana. Upamana means you have a knowledge of A, and when you come across B, There is a similarity between A and B, so I am able to recognize B because I have knowledge of A. Example, there is a thing called bull. I have not seen bull, but I have seen cow. And I know that cow, I know bull looks like a cow. So when the bull comes in front of me, I say, this is not cow because I know cow, but this must be bull. Why? It looks, I know that it is something similar. So I'm importing the knowledge of cow and implanting it on bull to call it a bull. This is called comparative analogy to know the object. So this is called upamana. Then there is something called arthapatti. Arthapatti means you somehow presume and then come to a conclusion. The best example is there is a boy who did not sat for the examination and he stood first in the university. And it has happened. Let us say it is a fact. What will you presume? Your immediate presumption is he must be a minister's son. How did you come to this conclusion? This is called arthapatti. You do not know, but still you presume that it must be because only minister's son can do this. This is called presumptive knowledge or arthapatti. And the last knowledge or pramana is called anupalabdhi. For example, right now when I'm speaking, you know that I'm not singing. How do you know I'm not singing? Its absence is known to you. This called again a knowledge. The place where you are sitting, there is no gold lying around you. How do you know? Because there is no gold. No. Its absence is also known to you. This is called anupalabdhi. So these are 6 different types of pramanas. Each darshana believes in different pramanas. Charvak Maharaj believes only in pratyaksha pramana, no anumana, no shabda, no upamana, no arthapatti, no anupalabdhi, no shabda, nothing. Only pratyaksha. What is seen is knowledge. Khalas. So that is called as only one pramana. In Buddhist people and Vaisheshika believe in 2, pratyaksha and anuman. Sankhya and Yoga, which we are studying, believes in 3, pratyaksha, anuman and shabda. Nyaya believes in 4, Prabhakar Mimamsa believes in 5, and Advaita believes in 6. That is not the part of our discussion today. But Sankhya and Yoga believe only in 3 pramanas, pratyaksha, anuman and shabda. The reason why I am telling these pramanas is the 49th sutra says, Shrut Anumana Pradnyabhyam Anya Vishaya Vishesharthatvat. Now, this is something important for us to understand. In the normal world, you take Pratyaksha Pramana, Anumana Pramana, and Shabda as 3 Pramana or validations to know the knowledge. Pratyaksha means you see something with your indriyas, with your eyes, you believe in it, that is first pramana. Anumana, you are not seeing it pratyaksha, but you are deducing it through tarka. You are not seen that COVID vaccine goes inside and does what, but you believe that since vaccine is there, then it must be producing antibody and antibody must be killing the virus. This is anumana. And shabda, we believe in what Guru Deva says. This is Shabda Pramana. These 3 Pramana are used for the Samanya Dharma of all the world that we have. So any object you take, it's a Samanya Dharma can be understood by these 3 Pramanas. If I say that this is an handkerchief, this is Pratyaksha Pramana. By Pratyaksha, seeing with eyes, I come to know this is. So for Samanyata, these 3 Pramanas are used. But Rutambara Buddhi, you comes to know Vishesha aspect of an object. This is important to understand. When a person of Gurudev or Yogi looks at the world, after reaching Samadhi, when he comes back into the world, now the world is not the same for him. For us, it is the world of objects. Why? Because Pratyaksha Pramana, this is handkerchief, Pratyaksha Pramana, Anumana, Shabda, everything. But we do not know the Vishesha Rupa of this handkerchief. We say handkerchief is also consciousness, but do we realize it? No. Do we see it? No. Why? Because this is a Vishesha Guna. Peculiarity is special peculiarity of this particular object. This special peculiarity is never known to us. Only in Samadhi you come to know that. A person who has reached Samadhi and has come back, he knows Visheshata. That is the reason why they are not at all envious of anything in this world, because they understand the Visheshata. Everything they see as consciousness. Please do not misunderstand. When they see consciousness, doesn't mean that they see us only as a blob of energy. No, they say you as it is. They can understand you. Gurudeva was eating Srikhand and saying, wow, what a Srikhand, it is fine. He was doing that. But he was simultaneously aware of Srikhand as consciousness, me as consciousness, eating as consciousness, and all the three as consciousness. There's a simultaneous feeling of consciousness perception and simultaneous feeling of differentiation of consciousness, which we do in our normal things. So we know the Samanya Guna. Yogi knows the Vishesha Guna. And that is why Rutambara deals with Visheshata. We deal with Samanyata. Samanya is called Laukika Pratyaksha. And Rutambara deals with Alaukika Pratyaksha. So Alaukika Jnanam, Alaukika Anubhav, ours is Laukika Anubhav. That is the difference between a yogi and a non-yogi. Shrut Anumana Prajnabhyam. Why it is so? What is the reason? Why this particular thing is like this? We can take the example. When we say Shabda, for example, in our day-to-day world, we call anything as anything. For example, we say it is a wristwatch. When we say wristwatch, it is an indicative word. For this contraption which we put on our wrist, we call it as wristwatch. Fine. And this is sufficient for us to interact in the world. But is this the real nature of the wristwatch? We don't bother. Because there's no need. By calling it wristwatch and it shows time, that is the jnanam, that is enough for me. I'm not even bothered about the parts of the watch in day-to-day life. Why? Why bother? It is not required. The true nature of the wristwatch, the true nature of the Ramamurti, the true nature of this person who is talking, the true nature of the trees, the true nature of the mountain is never known to us. Raman Maharshi said, Arunachal mountain is a living God. It is reincarnation of Shiva. What happened to the other people? They saw only stone and clay and, a mountain, khalas. Why there is a difference between the two? Because we only see that and that is enough for us. I call it mountain, you call it mountain, he calls it mountains. There are trees on it and there is a stone and clay on it, which is enough for us to transact. But millions of mad people coming together and following some convention doesn't make it a true thing. A yogi is a different person who perceives the things differently because of Rutambara Buddhi. Sometimes your knowledge is questioned so badly. There are some paradoxes in philosophy. The famous paradoxes is of Zeno's paradox. Zeno was a philosopher, Greek philosopher. It's not our subject, but I'm giving just an example to know how our knowledge can be absolutely ridiculous. There is a story of Achilles. You all know Achilles was a warrior, Greek warrior, very powerful warrior who could run at a wind speed. So they say if Achilles and a tortoise, they decide to race with each other, immediately to our mind it comes that what tortoise can do? Achilles, in no time he will go somewhere. But look at what I'm talking. Let us say the tortoise has started 100 meters ahead. That means he was 100 meters ahead. He was given a head start, and then Achilles started running, right? Now, every time Achilles moves forward, the tortoise is also going to move forward, maybe very little forward, maybe this man little more forward. Now, if we look at in this comparison, every moment you slice the time, every moment Achilles tries to move forward, there will be one moment tortoise also moved forward. We are talking of the theoretical aspect. Every time Achilles moves forward, tortoise not stand still. So there will be point something, tortoise will be ahead. So at any given point of time, Achilles tries to go forward, there will be some forward that the tortoise would have taken already. That means theoretically, Achilles will never overtake tortoise. Why? Because every moment of Achilles, the tortoise will be also expected to move because it is not steady. Similarly, we can take a paradox of an arrow. When arrow is shot from one place, it is in speed. But what is speed? Speed is when something goes from A to B. That means at A it was stationary, and B also it is stationary. From A to B we call speed, but A is stationary, B is stationary. That means intermittent things are also stationary. That means it is a chain of stationary things. Then how can stationary things go to the speed or the movement? I'm just talking of paradoxes. Why the examples are given here is, this is how our knowledge of Shabda Praman or Anuman or Pratyaksha can deceive us, can never give us the true things. And true means it has to be Trikala Badita Satya. That is the reason why Rutambara Buddhi of the yogi gives the knowledge which never is untrue. It is always true. And what is always true is Satya, that which gives Satyam. Sa Satyam Bibharti, that which dawns DON, not DAWN, which dawns the Satyam is called Rutam. So it is, Buddhi is called as Rutambara. Now what happens to yogi who is in Rutambara Buddhi? Imagine somebody who is blind and he has knowledge of, in blindness, whatever he learns. For 20 years he is blind, and 21st year, first day, he gets his vision back. What will happen? He will see the same things but in new light, because now the eyes are there. Similarly, the yogi who is in Rutambara Buddhi sees world and everything into new perspectives. These new perspectives are called new samskaras. Now what has happened? Buddhi has changed from normal Buddhi, became Prajna, Prajna became Rutambara. Moment it becomes Rutambara, the world's perception has changed, new samskar, new seeing has come. This new seeing sublates the old seeing. That means old samskaras are wiped out. That is the reason why a yogi in his early life may be a person who was jealous, maybe he was a vyapari, maybe he was having anger. All those are gone and new samskaras are coming. So in Rutambara Buddhi, new samskaras which are coming, they oppose the old samskaras. And which were the old samskaras? The vrittis, vrittaya panchatayaha, klishta aklishta. We saw smruti, nidra, pramana, viparyaya, all those are gone. And what is the definition of yoga? Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Since the vrittis are done nirodha, yogi becomes yoga purna. Now comes the last part and the last ending of Samadhi Pada. All right, normal samskaras are gone. New samskaras have come, but they are still samskaras. Maybe yogi is now seeing everything in new light, but he's still having samskaras. So what happens next? What happens is, those samskaras are also to be sublated. This is height of everything. Rutambara Buddhi is aroused, new samskaras are made, even those new samskaras are to be ablated. When those new samskaras are ablated at the last and the final frontier of concentration, at that point of time, along with these new samskaras, the antakarana also starts dissolving. This is called chittalaya. The whole substratum, the ground itself is getting swallowed. So there is no harvest anymore. No crop can grow. Howsoever good the crop may be, the new samskaras are also sublated. The chitta or the antakaran is also getting dissolved. And the chitta dissolves into what? Into avyakta. And when everything has resolved into avyakta, what remains? Only the Purusha remains. When only Purusha remains, it is called Purusha Khyati. And such a yogi is Kevali, because he has now Kevala Jnana. What is Kevala? Keval means isolation. What did he isolate? He isolated Purusha from everything else, including Prakriti. All the evolutes of Prakriti, from avyakta to vyakta to sthula to sukshma, everything is dissolved. Tasyapi nirodhe sarva nirodhat nirbija samadhi. This is nirbija samadhi. In this samadhi, if somebody goes, he is completely unaware of anything in this world, to an extent that he doesn't remember anything. There's nothing. He's like a log of wood. And that is why normally it is said that more than 21 days he will not remain alive. His body will decay, decompose. Jnanadeva, Santa Dhaneshwar, and Alam Prabhu, if we have heard of it, another great saint of medieval time, both of them went into Nirbija Samadhi on their own, and that's it. People made a tomb, or they erected a tombstone over there. Jivanta Samadhi, Sajivana Samadhi, Sanjivana Samadhi they took. And then what happened to their body? They left their body. Why? They became one with everything. They went beyond the avyakta. Only the Purusha remains. When Prakriti itself is not there, how the bhutas will be there? You burn the body, you bury the body because body is still existing, sir. In Sanjivana Samadhi, the Prakriti is not there. Panchamahabhutas are not there. Trigunas are not there. What are you going to burn? There is nothing left to burn. There is nothing left to bury. There is no trace left at all. Shankaracharya's death, if you read about it, nobody knows how he died. All that we know the description is Hastamalak and two of the, I think, Padmacharya, those are the two disciples who followed Gurudeva. The last one shepherd told that I saw a yogi walking this way. Both of them realized it must be our own Acharya, Shankaracharya, walking up there towards the mountain. All of a sudden, they looked at the mountain and they could see a very frail body there walking up. And after some time, all they could see was some light and it's gone. That is called Nirbija Samadhi. There are those avatars who may come back from Nirbija Samadhi and be amongst us. But there are those who go and go not to return. Swami Vivekananda was so fond of this. Ramakrishna Krishna Paramahamsa had to tell Kali Mata, Mai, please ensure that Narendra does not take this samadhi, otherwise people of this world will not be benefited. There are millions of people who want to have the knowledge from this great avatara. So do not let Narendra anytime attempt to Nirbija Samadhi, because he can attempt it so easily, and if he attempts it, he will not come back. That is why Maharaj, because of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the avatar, his intervention, Kalimata, the Prakriti, had to hold on to Swami Vivekananda for 39 years. And that is how we all got benefited. Otherwise, we would have never known what Raja Yoga is. For a long period of 700 years during the medieval period, Patanjali Yoga Shastra had been relegated to past. Nobody was studying it. The Punruthanam, the Punarjivan of Raja Yoga was because of Swami Vivekananda. Today, all our interest in yoga is because of Swami Vivekananda. A person who has been hailed as Yatiraj, the king amongst the yogis. Our own Gurudeva, Tapovan Maharaj. Tapovan Maharaj was so influenced by Swami Vivekananda. So we all must pay our respect to the great sage Vivekananda, who exhibited all that is told in this Samadhi Pada. And that is how it brings us to the end of 51 shlokas or 51 sutras of the first part of the 4 parts of Patanjali Yoga Sutra called Samadhi Pada. One of the most difficult part to understand in Yoga Darshana is this Samadhi Pada. You all have been patient in listening. Gurudeva has been kind enough to give the words in my mouth to explain it to you. I am immensely benefited by your patience. I am immensely benefited by Gurudeva's blessings that I could study along with you this Samadhi Pada. There is so much inspiring in this Samadhi Pada. There is so much to study in Samadhi Pada that it can transform your life into a serious sadhaka and puts you on the track of yogi. May all of us become a great yogi following in the footsteps of Gurudeva and the great Yatiraj Swami Vivekananda, which may happen in this birth or it may happen in any of the coming births. Who bothers? All we need to know is we are the children of lion. We are Amrutasya Putraha. We shall do efforts, do sadhana, and we shall bring with Bhagirata Prayatna the Ganga, the knowledge, the basking in the glory of Nirbija Samadhi. We all pray to the Lord that we all will be blessed sometime or the other in our journey in this universe through different bodies. One of the bodies shall receive these great blessings that normally a yogi receives of Nirbija Samadhi. Hari Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om, Sanjay ji. This Ridhambhara you mentioned is it is coming in the Ganapati Atharva Vedam also is the same thing?
In Ganapati Atharshishya, it is not Rutambhara. What comes is Rutam Vachmi Satyam Vachmi.
Yeah, Satyam Vachmi. I thought it is Ridhambhara Satyam Vachmi. Okay, it is.
Rutambhara is that Buddhi which speaks Rutam and Satyam. That's why it is Ganapati's Aradhana. Ganapati is the epitome of Rutambhara. Ganapati means Rutambhara. Hari Om.
Hari Om. And this, what is the meaning of Yati Raja?
Yati Raja. Yati means yogi. Raja, the king of yogis.
Okay, Hari Om.
Hari Om Sanjay ji.
Hari Om.
Firstly, thank you so much for the Samadhi path, because I've tried to read Vivekananda's Patanjali Yoga Sutras, not the Raj Yoga text that you had, but there is another text purely on, and it has become very confusing to go through it alone. This is a lot more effort, as we put in. My questions today is, when you had come to the part where you say, the alaukik buddhi, right? Rutambara buddhi becomes vishesh. Now,
Yes.
at this stage, automatically the chitta begins to dissolve and become avyakta, or is there
No.
something that one needs to be done? I may have missed that part.
Yeah, two things are there. When this Yugapat, or it is called as Yogaja Jnanam, when Rutambara Buddhi focuses on any aspect of knowledge, when you are supposing Swami Vivekananda was asked to speak in a church about St. Matthew's. Now, when he was studying, where was the book? What did he carry with him? There was nothing that he had carried. What happens is, with concentration, he was able to, by using Rutambara Buddhi, it would take him no time to know everything about St. Matthew's. This is application of Rutambara Buddhi. Nirbija Samadhi is going beyond Rutambara Buddhi, because it is not using Rutambara Buddhi, it is going beyond Rutambara Buddhi, so that no samskaras, not even Rutambara Buddhi, is left in the chitta. When nothing is left in chitta, as I told you, chitta is a functional module. When no function is left, the module is gone. That is called chitta vilaya. That is nirbija samadhi, because a person in a nirbija samadhi will not speak, because he is not aware of anything. There is person in nirbija samadhi. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, 6 months, people came who somebody slapped him, somebody just tried to touch him, he fell down, so another person hold him like a log of wood. That is called Nirbija Samadhi. The only person who remained in Nirbija Samadhi beyond 21 days for a period of 6 months, the only miracle that happened in spiritual field is Ramakrishna Paramahamsa in last few hundred years. So do read that aspect of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. The crows on the head, they pecked on the head, it was bleeding on the head, the birds were perching there, they were even passing shit on the face. He was not eating. Somebody came and put the hands inside the mouth, opened the mouth and put something. So otherwise he would have died, because he had no clue whatsoever with the world. He had no relation with the world. That is called chitta vilaya or nirvikalpa, or a correct technical word, nirbija samadhi. Hari.
So one more thing, we talk of all the paths meeting, and leading to the same place.
Yes.
Now, this is the journey of a yogi.
Yes.
So do people, and this calls for a lot of effort, right? It's
yes.
Focus internally, and then, so do the other paths also meet somewhere along the way, or is it just each path is individual, and I guess they meet at this Nirbija Samadhi level?
All paths go through the same way. I will give you an example. Sir, you can be an automobile engineer and you can repair a carburetor, and the car will start, or the scooter will start. And there is a local mechanic who can also repair it and the scooter will start. Now, what is the difference between the two? Both of them have achieved the results. One, by studying the theory properly and employing it in practice. Another, by directly practicing it. So whatever is Sravana, Manana, Chintana, Nididhyasana, which is given to us, all that exercise is doing the same thing. The Bhakti Yoga also goes through the same thing. The names are different. It is called Rasa Pravrutti in Bhakti Shastra. The Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to lose the consciousness while saying Hari Hari. What was happening? Hari Hari means he was getting dissolved himself into the Hari. They get so much involved into that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to behave like a woman. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, when he became woman, sir, hold your breath. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa even was menstruating. When he became Hanuman, he thought of Hanuman. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa actually developed a tail, which receded later on after 6 months. So that is why every path Even Jnana, Dhyana, Raja Yoga, Hatha Yoga, Karma Yoga, all of them ultimately reach to the same stage. Only thing is, the implements with which you start the journey are different. A Karma Yogi's implement is different than a Jnana Yogi's. A Raja Yogi, which we are studying, he straight away leaves everything and sits into Dhanam and carries on. A Karma Yogi, instead of going to the jungle, sits into the city. And through the work that he is doing, he reaches the same place. The experience are same. That is why siddhis are not different for different people. Everybody gets the same siddhi. Tukaram Maharaj did not do Raja Yoga, but he has written everything about Raja Yoga through some of his Abhangas. Jnaneshwara was a Nathapanthi guru, but he has written about Bhakti Shastra. All these rivers, they meet each other at a particular point of time. They start at different levels, but they meet and then they go together. And the experiences are described in different manner. Some of the saints will not give you the details of why they are getting this experience. They will simply say that this is what happens. So that is why Ata kothe dhave man tujhe charan dekh liya. Tukaram Maharaj says, why should my mind wander here and there? I have seen your feet. What do you mean by seen your feet? My mind is no more there. Only your feet are existing. What is it? Nirbij Samadhi. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, Sanjay ji.
Hari Om.
So after Samadhi, the preceding chapters, they are talking about, so we'll be covering concentration. So what kind of, what are we learning in the preceding chapters?
In the subsequent chapters, you mean?
Yes, in subsequent chapters, yes.
Yes. Now, it might sound little paradoxical, but Patanjali Maharaj has initially taken Samadhi, and then he's talking about how to reach Samadhi. So now we are going into Sadhana Pad. Whatever we just now saw is basically the aspects of let us say, we are now, right now, what we saw in the first 51 sutras is the dish that is offered to us, the Srikhandam. What are the qualities? How does it look? How does it taste? Everything. Now we are going to see how to prepare the Srikhandam. So now it is Sadhana Pada. Now he is going to talk about to reach these Samadhis, what will we be doing? And now you will find there is Kriya Yoga, there is Ashtanga Yoga. These are 8 different steps to reach this stage. So first he has given the description of Phalam. Now he's going to talk about the tree. That is how the second pada will be there. In the third pada, we'll be seeing the powers of a yogi. That would be of immense interest to us because it is more like stories. There are only powers and powers described there in the third Vibhuti pada. And the Kaivalya pada, that is the last part which talks about something akin to Upanishads, about the Atma Tattvam, etc., about the Purusha Tattvam, etc. So this is how the Yoga Sutras are divided. So now we'll be embarking upon methodologies and practical exercises. Now the Dhyanam means what? Now what is Yama? What is Niyama? What is Pratyahara? Everything will be studied now. Hari
Om. Hari Om.
So just one thing, if nobody else is asking, this is an interesting thing that you explained, and I was trying to figure this out because the Samadhi path is probably the most difficult part to understand, and it can deter anybody from going ahead, right? So is there any logic? Because one would think that for a seeker, if one was teach somebody, you teach the basics, how do you do it, interest them, and then get them. Here, it's like PhD, and then you come down to,
It appears like that, sir, but it is not so. Let me tell you one thing. Do you know what is the first sutra of Patanjali? Atha Yoganushasanam. Atha means what? Somebody who has already done other exercises and is coming for the final book. So that is why our normal Vyavaharika Vishwa understanding is, first you understand the methods and then you understand what is the result out of it. The place and the person to whom Yoga Shastra is expected to be studied is a person who is Sadhana Chatushta Sampanna. So he has already reached a stage where he can understand Samadhi Pada. Ours is a different thing. Because the printed form is available, we lay our hands and start reading the book. That is not how the Grantha is studied. The Granth is studied only when you become Sadhana Chatushta. That is why Atha Yoga Anushasanam. If you are Sadhana Chatushta Sampanna, let us start with Samadhi Pada. So Patanjali Maharaj is expecting that the reader is a person who is already Sadhana Chatushta Sampanna. So Patanjali Maharaj is expecting that the person is masters, and now he is taking this PhD in his hand. Unfortunately, there are people of first standard or maybe without no standard, we are trying to approach it. That is why we find it a little physical in that presentation form, as well as the depth. So it is not that he has and it is done with a person of Patanjali's stature. Again, the one who had Nirbija Samadhi, you think he had to think how to write a sutra book? He would know the best sequence. So this is called Shabda Pramana. Since he has written it, I cannot expect it to be the way I am inclined to study, because my study is a Vyavaharika Vishwa. His study is of Adhyatmika Vishwa. In Adhyatmika Vishwa, the sequence is given by the one who is a realized soul. So we adhere to it. Like in Bhagavad Gita, many people say, why the Vishad in the beginning? Why 18th is at the end? It is such a critical adhyaya. Sir, it is not for us to question. Why? It has come out of the buddhi, which is Rutambara buddhi. So can Rutambara buddhi be questioned by a Vyavaharik buddhi? No. Hari Om.
Sanjay, when you talked about Rutambara buddhi,
Yes.
and in that context, you said Shabd Pranam, Shabd. So Anuman and Pratyaksh Praman, I can understand because you have your own interpretations in which you
Yes.
perceive something.
Yes.
But my understanding was that Shabd Pranam is actually ultimate. So you actually have to reach what the Shabd is telling. You might misinterpret it, but you also talked about that being a limited and that's not the ultimate. Could you just explain that a bit?
Yes. Shabda Praman, amongst the different 6 Pramanat, Shabda is also called Agama or Shruti or Veda. Shabda Praman is reliance on the words of great sages, in short. Yes, we have to do that. But the fact is that, sir, how many of us can claim that we have correctly understood what is written in Bhagavad Gita? Again, even though Shabda is Praman, you interpret that Shabda as per your ability. So it is not that the Shabda Praman is falling short, it is our ability that falls short. So Shabda may not communicate precisely what the Shabda of sages want to communicate. When I say something as good, that good may not be your good. Why? Again, it gets tainted with the vritti. So this is again a samanya. While Rutambara Buddhi is a Vishesha. And this Vishesha is so difficult to understand. Only Rutambara Buddhi understands. That's why many a times even an adept yogi gets completely tired while doing sadhana. And then he says, God, what should I do? And then the God says, go to a guru. And now you will understand the importance of Guru. What Guru does is, when you are not able to understand anything, he is the only one who can literally put his hand on your head. That is called Shambhavi Diksha. He can just touch you and you will understand everything. Why? Because Shabda alone, although amongst the Pramana, Shabda is the best. But Shabda is not the complete Pramana. Even that falls short because it deals with Samanyata. And the subject is Vishesha. You require Buddhi with Visheshata. Buddhi with Visheshata is Rutambara Buddhi. That is why Shabda is like, all others are sticks and ropes. Shabda is a torch. So naturally it has power. But again, that torch also falls short because its light cannot go to that extent which is required. That is the reason why, though Gurudev has given the commentary, why is it that after reading that suddenly we are not becoming mukta? Because what he said from Rutambara Buddhi. Moment it came into the word, now we absorb it from our normal Buddhi. That is the reason why when Tapovan Maharaj taught and Gurudeva learned, then he could learn the Shabda properly. But not when Gurudeva teaches and we. Why? Because our sadhana chatushta sampannata or readiness is not there. One, and Gurudeva not only heard only the Shabda and he became emancipated, he heard the Shabda and then meditated upon that, which is called Anusandhana in normal words and Dhyanam in Yoga Shastra. Hari Om.